My best friend, Maya, suddenly stopped talking to me until I found out her dad, Steve, was having an affair with my mom and secretly filming everyone who changed in their pool house, including kids. So when I posted a video exposing him, he turned the entire community against me by playing the grieving widower until we discovered my mom had found the cameras months earlier and was gathering evidence the whole time. I still remember the exact moment my mom told me I couldn't go to Maya's house anymore. Maya was my best friend since 2nd grade. We were inseparable. Her house was only 5 minutes away, but it felt like a whole different world. They had this huge pool with a water slide, and her mom Claire always had the best snacks and never cared how late we stayed up. We had matching necklaces with half a heart each, and this whole plan about going to UCLA together. We even had a pact that we'd be each other's maid of honor and live on the same street when we were married. For 2 weeks, I kept texting Maya, but she wouldn't answer. Her mom used to pick me up every Friday, but suddenly that stopped too. At school, Maya wouldn't look at me. She started eating lunch in the library instead of our usual spot. If I tried to talk to her, she'd just mumble something about having homework and practically run away. It was like losing a part of myself. I couldn't understand what happened. I kept replaying every conversation, every stupid thing I might have said, but nothing made sense. My mom was acting weird too. She started going to a different grocery store even though it was way further. When I asked why, she just said she liked it better. She threw out her favorite swimsuit, the red one she'd had forever, and when I asked about it, she got this strange look. She stopped wearing makeup, stopped straightening her hair. One night, I heard her crying in the bathroom with the shower running, trying to muffle the sound. I stood outside the door for like 20 minutes, just frozen, not knowing what to do. She never cried, not even when her dad died. At school, things got worse. Maya's brother Jake started spreading rumors about me, about how my family was trashy, how my mom was a homewrecker. I didn't understand any of it. I tried asking my parents, but they just said, sometimes adults make mistakes that hurt everyone around them. That was it. That was all I got. By summer, it was like Maya and I had never been friends at all. I'd see her mom at Target, and she'd literally turn her cart around and go the other way. Once, I saw Maya at the community pool and tried to wave, but her older brother Jake stood right in front of me and said, she doesn't want to talk to you, ever. That summer was the worst. I had no friends, my parents were barely speaking, and nobody would tell me anything. I started having these nightmares where I was screaming, but no sound came out. When 7th grade started, things at home got even weirder. Mom started going out more, therapy group, she called it, but she'd come home looking hollow. Dad moved his computer to the basement and put a lock on the door. I started eating dinner alone most nights, watching Friends reruns while they had their discussions behind closed doors. I remember one night, must have been November, I couldn't sleep and went downstairs for water. Mom was sitting in the dark kitchen, just staring at nothing. When she saw me, she jumped like she'd seen a ghost. I asked her straight up what happened with Maya's family. Why couldn't we be friends anymore? She looked at me for the longest time. Then he just said, sometimes adults do things that hurt everyone around them. That was it. That was all I got. I became obsessed with figuring it out. Started watching my parents like they were suspects in a crime show. I kept a little notebook where I wrote down weird things they said or did. Mom on the phone. I can't testify. Dad shredding papers in his office. Mom throwing away a birthday card from Claire without opening it. Pathetic, I know, but I was desperate. The break came from Victoria, Jasmine's cousin from another school. We had PE together, and one day she actually talked to me about it. She said she was sorry about everything. I played dumb. What are you talking about? And she gave me this look like she couldn't believe I didn't know. Then she said something about how what Steve did in the pool house was sick, and it wasn't my fault. I pushed her to tell me more, but she clammed up. Said her mom would call her if she gossiped about it. I started piecing things together. How mom always changed in Maya's pool house instead of the bathroom. How Maya's dad Steve always seemed to be around when we were swimming, offering mom different suits from Claire's collection if hers didn't fit right. How he'd text mom about pool schedules even though we had a set routine. I didn't want to believe what I was starting to think. Couldn't even make myself think of the words. The confirmation came in the worst way possible. It was at the winter band concert. Maya was playing the flute and I was in choir. All our parents were there for the first time in the same room since everything happened. After the show, I was looking for mom when I saw her and Steve in the hallway by the music rooms. They didn't see me. Then my dad appeared with Jake. That night was the first time I ever heard my parents actually talk about it. They didn't know I was sitting at the top of the stairs. And when I finally heard it, my heart dropped. Because not only was my mom and Steve having an affair, but Steve was also secretly filming everyone and anyone who went into his pool house changing room, including kids. I posted the video at exactly 11 p.m., my hands trembling as I hit publish. Within minutes, the view count started climbing. 10 views, 20, 50. By midnight, it had passed 500. My phone buzzed with notifications I couldn't bring myself to read. I just sat there in my dark room, watching the numbers go up, wondering if I'd just made everything better or infinitely worse. Mom's phone rang downstairs. I crept to my door and cracked it open. Her voice carried up the stairs, shaky and confused. She was reading a text out loud to Dad. Our neighbor, Mrs. De Peterson, had messaged her asking if everything was okay, saying she'd just seen a concerning video about some pool house incident. Mom's footsteps rushed toward the stairs and I scrambled back into bed, pulling the covers over my head like I was 5 years old again. The next morning, I had to go to Walgreens to pick up my anxiety medication. The doctor had prescribed it after the nightmares got so bad I was afraid to sleep. I was standing in line when I saw him, Steve. He was at the counter buying a bunch of USB drives and a big bottle of bleach. We both froze when we made eye contact. I thought about turning around, leaving, but my name got called for my prescription. I tried to walk past him without acknowledging his presence, but as I passed the battery display, he stepped into my path. His voice was low, barely above a whisper, but each word hit like a punch. He told me I had no idea what I was starting, that I was playing with things I didn't understand. The cashier called him back to the counter and he left, but I stood there by the batteries for another 5 minutes, my legs too shaky to move. When I finally made it to the parking lot, Steve was loading his car. Something inside me snapped. All the months of confusion, of being shut out, of watching my family fall apart. I marched over to him before I could lose my nerve. I told him I knew about the cameras. The words just tumbled out. His face went completely white, then bright red. An elderly woman pushing her cart nearby slowed down, clearly concerned by the tension. Steve's whole demeanor shifted. He put on this worried, sympathetic expression and told her I'd been struggling since poor Claire passed away, that I needed help. The woman looked at me with such pity that I wanted to scream. I got to school late, my head spinning from the confrontation. During first period, my phone vibrated. Maya. My heart nearly stopped. Her text was short and angry, demanding I delete the video or she'd never speak to me again. But then, 30 seconds later, another another message came through. She needed to know if her swim team had ever changed in that room. The fear in those words was unmistakable. She wasn't worried about her dad. She was worried about herself and her friends. I stared at my phone screen, paralyzed by the choice. Keep the video up as evidence, or take it down to help Maya check her old photos privately without the whole world watching. My finger hovered over the delete button. Maya was scared of being associated with this, scared of what people would think, scared of what might have been captured. I understood that fear, but I also knew that taking down the video might mean Steve could make everything disappear. I decided to help Maya first. I took the video down temporarily and texted her that she had 2 hours to check whatever she needed. She didn't respond, but I saw the read receipt. While I waited, I made copies of the video on 3 different USB drives and uploaded it to a private cloud account. I wasn't going to let Steve win, but I also couldn't abandon Maya when she was this scared. During that 2-hour window, Steve struck back. He posted on the neighborhood Facebook group about privacy violations by a troubled teen. He included a screenshot of my video with my username visible. The comments started pouring in immediately. People calling me disturbed, saying I needed therapy, wondering what kind of parents would raise such a child. My mom called me from the grocery store, her voice tight with panic. She'd run into 3 different neighbors who'd all seen the post. One of them had confronted her in the cereal aisle about getting me help. By lunch, everything was chaos. Dad's work had called him about Steve's complaint. Apparently, Steve had contacted them directly, expressing concern about Dad's home situation affecting his work performance. Maya found me in the hallway between classes. Her face was blotchy from crying, but her expression was furious. She grabbed my arm and pulled me into an empty classroom. She demanded to know why I was doing this to her family, why I couldn't just leave things alone. I'm wondering what's really going on with Steve buying all those USB drives and bleach at the pharmacy. That's such a strange combination of items to grab together, especially right after this video went up. I tried to explain about the cameras, about what her dad had done, but she put her hands over her ears like a little kid. She didn't want to hear it. The meeting with Dad's HR department happened that afternoon. He had to leave work to pick me up and drive me there. The whole ride, he kept sighing and rubbing his temples. The HR lady was nice enough, but she took notes on everything I said. I tried to explain the situation, how Steve was manipulating everyone, how there were cameras in the pool house. She nodded and wrote it all down, creating an official record that Steve's lawyer would later subpoena as evidence of my admitted obsessive behavior. The next day, Steve's performance at Starbucks was Oscar-worthy. He broke down sobbing about missing Claire so much, right in the middle of the morning rush. One of the mom group ladies was there and live-streamed the whole thing, not knowing about the cameras or what had really happened. The video went viral in our local Facebook groups. Poor Steve, the grieving widower being harassed by a vindictive teenager. The comments were brutal. People shared stories about how wonderful Steve was, how he'd helped them through tough times, how he'd been such a devoted husband to Claire. Even my 12-year-old cousin turned against me. At Sunday dinner, he defended Steve, telling everyone how Steve had bought pizza for all the kids after Claire's funeral when the adults forgot about them. He looked at me with such disappointment, like I was the villain in this story. I wanted to explain, but how do you tell a 12-year-old about hidden cameras and adult crimes? You don't. Monday morning, I spotted something in the school parking lot. Steve's car was unlocked, and there was a USB drive sitting in the cup holder. No label, but I recognized the brand. Same ones he'd bought at Walgreens. My hand was on his door handle when I realized what I was about to do. Taking it would be theft. It would be crossing a line I couldn't uncross. But what if it had evidence? What if it could prove everything? I didn't take it. Instead, I took photos of it in his car, making sure to capture the license plate in the frame for proof of location. That's when Principal Johnson appeared behind me. Someone had reported me lurking around Steve's car. She called a mandatory meeting about my concerning behavior toward a grieving family. The disappointment in her voice was worse than anger would have been. The meeting included my parents, the school counselor, and the vice principal. They talked about grief manifesting in unhealthy ways, about how losing a friend could trigger obsessive behaviors. They mandated counseling sessions and warned that any further incidents involving Steve or his family would result in suspension. My mom sat there silent, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Dad just kept nodding, agreeing to everything, promising it wouldn't happen again. That night, I discovered another blow. My college recommendation letter writer, my AP chemistry teacher, needed Steve's signature as athletic department head for my scholarship applications. Without his approval, my chances at the science scholarship were dead. It was like he had his fingers in every part of my life, pulling strings I didn't even know existed. Dad found me crying over my scholarship paperwork. He sat on my bed and told me I was acting just like when Grandpa was sick, creating drama from grief, he said, making everything about me. He reminded me how I'd kept that notebook of clues when Grandpa was dying, convinced the doctors were hiding something. The comparison stung because part of me wondered if he was right. Was I doing it again? Was I seeing conspiracies where there were none? Steve's next move was calculated. He went through my old Instagram posts, screenshotting every photo of me with Maya, every comment I'd made on their family photos. He compiled them into a document claiming they showed an unhealthy fixation on their family since Claire's death. He shared it with concerned parents, painting a picture of a disturbed teenager who couldn't let go. 3 of my friends' parents saw it and forbade contact. My already small social circle shrank to nothing. I learned from Maya during a chance encounter at the library that Steve controlled Claire's memorial fund, the fund that was supposed to pay for Maya's college. Donations were still arriving weekly from people who loved Claire, and Steve had complete control. Maya looked defeated when she told me, like she'd aged years in just a few months. She whispered that she was scared to cross him, scared he'd take away her future. Then she walked away before I could respond. The exhaustion hit me hard. I'd been staying up late researching, trying to find any legal precedent, any way to force an investigation. I fell asleep in AP history, my head on my desk. My teacher assumed it was grief exhaustion and sent me to the counselor, who mandated more therapy sessions. Every attempt to fight back just made me look more unstable. Mom's sister, my Aunt Sarah, tried to stay neutral. She came over one evening when Dad was working late. She sat with Mom and me at the kitchen table, tears in her eyes. She believed something had happened, she said, but she couldn't take sides. This was tearing everyone apart. She had to think of her own kids, her own family. Mom just nodded, understanding even as it broke her heart. Another ally lost. The next door thread about me hit 200 comments. Teen harassing widowed father. People I'd never met were discussing my mental health, my parents' marriage, my future. Neighbors crossed the street when they saw me coming. The grocery store clerk who'd known me since I was little could barely make eye contact. I'd become a pariah in my own community. community. Steve's alibi for a key time frame seemed airtight. He claimed he was at grief counseling when one of the incidents occurred. The sign-in sheet confirmed it, but I did some digging and discovered the counselor had been away that specific day. A substitute had been running the session. It was a crack in his story, but who would believe me? The unstable teenager versus the grieving widower with documentation. My best friend, the only one still talking to me, finally admitted why she couldn't fully support me. Steve controlled the recruiting connections for her sport. He was friends with all the college scouts. Without his recommendation, her dreams of playing in college were over. She apologized, tears streaming down her face, but said she couldn't risk her future. I understood, even as it felt like another knife in my back. The irony came when I tried to prove Steve had lied about one specific date. In doing so, I accidentally revealed that I'd also lied to my parents that night. I'd said I was at a study group, but I'd actually been at a party Maya had invited me to months ago, before everything fell apart. My credibility, already shaky, crumbled further. Steve had managed to make me undermine myself. Someone photographed me laughing with classmates after school. Just a moment of normalcy in the chaos. A brief joke that made me forget everything for 30 seconds. But the photo was shared with a caption about how I seemed unbothered by the pain I was causing. The comments were vicious. How could I laugh while destroying a grieving family? What kind of person was I? By the end of that week, we'd reached a standstill. Steve and I both knew the truth. We both knew that whoever backed down first would lose everything. For me, it was Maya's trust, my community standing, and any chance for justice. For him, it was his reputation, his freedom, and his control over everyone around him. We were locked in a battle that was destroying everything around us, but neither of us could stop. The beginning was over. The real war was about to begin. The war began with Steve dating my mom's former friend, Margaret. She showed up at his house wearing mom's favorite perfume, quoting lines from movies mom used to love. At the grocery store, I watched her buying ingredients for mom's famous lasagna recipe, the one she'd made for Claire's memorial dinner. Margaret had clearly studied everything about mom, borrowing pieces of her identity like costume jewelry. Maya and I ended up at the same coffee shop after school. We sat at opposite ends, pretending not to see each other. When her friend asked about the pool house rules, Maya insisted her dad had always been strict about privacy, but I remembered differently. I remembered Steve encouraging us to use it, saying the bathroom was too far. We'd had this exact conversation before, but somehow we each remembered completely different versions. The certainty in Maya's voice made me question my own memories. Going through my old phone, I found texts I'd sent Maya 2 years ago. There they were, my own words praising her dad, saying how cool he was, wishing mine was more fun like Steve. The messages made me sick. Steve had screenshot these too, adding them to his collection of evidence against me. My own words from before I knew the truth were now weapons in his arsenal. My little cousin approached me at family dinner, his face serious with concern. He told me Steve said I was sick like Claire had been before she died, that I needed help but was refusing it. The genuine worry in his 8-year-old eyes broke my heart. Steve had weaponized a child's compassion, turning my own family against me through their desire to help. The neighborhood watch meeting became another battlefield. Someone brought up the Ring doorbell footage from the night our families had argued on the street. The audio was clear, my voice, sharp with anger, promising I would ruin Steve. The footage provided context I couldn't deny. Even though my threat came after learning the truth, it looked like unprovoked harassment to everyone watching. My school counselor started treating our sessions differently. Something feels off about how Maya's remembering their pool house conversations so differently now. Makes me wonder if Steve's been working on reshaping her memories somehow. Maybe through repeated conversations where he plants different versions of events? She kept steering conversations toward my grief over losing Claire, suggesting my accusations were displacement, a way to avoid processing the loss. Every time I tried to explain about the cameras, she'd nod sympathetically and ask how Claire's death had affected me. The framework of grief became a cage I couldn't escape. Desperation drove me to guess Steve's email password. Claire's birthday worked on the third try. His inbox contained shared photo albums from family events, including ones with Maya and me. I forwarded them to myself, knowing he might delete everything. The last login timestamp caught my eye. Steve had accessed this account the night Claire died, at 3 a.m. What had he been doing? Claire's sister had posted on Instagram months before the death. Scrolling through her old posts, I found one about feeling uncomfortable at family pool parties, about weird vibes she couldn't explain. The post was vague, but the timing lined up. She'd sensed something was wrong, but hadn't been able to identify what. Her intuition had been screaming warnings that went unheeded. My therapist received a subpoena for our session notes. Steve's lawyer wanted records of everything I'd said about grief-related paranoia, about my obsessive tendencies. The safe space where I'd tried to process everything became another source of evidence against me. My own attempts to get help were twisted into proof of instability. I decided to record Steve at the gas station, holding my phone low, pretending to text, but he spotted it immediately. He'd been watching for exactly this kind of thing. He raised his voice, asking loudly why I was stalking him, making sure other customers heard. His performance was perfect. I looked like the aggressor while he played the victim. The confrontation had been a trap, and I'd walked right into it. Steve after school became impossible when the pickup line chaos intensified. Parents' cars blocked every route, teachers directed traffic, and Steve's car disappeared into the maze of vehicles. I'd spotted him heading toward a storage unit facility, but lost him in the afternoon rush. Whatever he was hiding there remained out of reach. The pool maintenance worker I approached at the hardware store backed away when I mentioned Steve. He explained that Steve's company handled half the pools in town, including his own neighborhood. Getting involved would mean losing his biggest client, maybe his entire business. He looked genuinely sorry but walked away. Another person choosing financial security over truth. At the pharmacy, I noticed Steve wearing an expensive watch I recognized. The inscription was visible when he reached for his receipt. Mom had given it to him for helping during our family crisis, her gratitude engraved in silver. He wore her gift like a trophy, a constant reminder of how he'd manipulated her trust. Steve made an offer through a mutual acquaintance. He would end everything if I publicly apologized to Maya and admitted to lying about the cameras. The terms were simple: restore his reputation, and he'd stop destroying mine. When I refused, the acquaintance shook her head sadly, saying I clearly didn't care about Maya's well-being during such a difficult time. The architectural plans at the city planning office revealed something crucial. The pool house layout was different than I remembered. The changing area and bathroom were separate spaces, not combined. My memories were accurate, but I'd been wrong about which room had cameras. This discovery should have been vindicating, but it only complicated things further. Maya's treehouse still stood in their their backyard, visible from the street. One evening, I climbed up while they were out. Hidden in an old candy tin, I found Claire's journal. Her handwriting filled pages with concerns about Steve's weird rules, his insistence on controlling pool house access. She'd sensed something was off but couldn't pinpoint what. Her intuition had been right. The journal entries showed Claire's growing unease. She wrote about Steve's mood swings, his possessiveness about the pool area, his strange reactions when she suggested updating the changing room. One entry mentioned finding receipts she didn't understand. Another described arguments about privacy boundaries. Claire had been building her own case without realizing it. My grandmother found herself caught between loyalty to me and her friendship with Steve's mother. They'd been in the same book club for 20 years. She couldn't lose her entire social circle, she explained, tears in her eyes. But that evening, she slipped me something while hugging goodbye. Claire's spare key, pressed into my palm. She whispered about God working through people in quiet ways. Creating a fake parent account, I infiltrated Steve's supporter Facebook group. The posts inside revealed how thoroughly he'd crafted his narrative. People shared stories of his kindness, his dedication to youth sports, his devotion to Claire. They discussed my family with pity and contempt. Some suggested interventions, others recommended keeping their kids away from me. At Claire's grave, I pretended to accidentally encounter Steve's sister. She was arranging fresh flowers, her movements careful and precise. When she saw me, her whole body tensed. She avoided eye contact, mumbling about needing to leave. But I caught her glancing back, her expression conflicted. She knew something but was too afraid or too loyal to speak. Maya's old tablet, forgotten in my room from a sleepover last year, still had her family cloud login saved. The pool house folder had been cleaned out, but the deletion history showed dozens of photos removed just days after Claire's death. Someone had systematically erased evidence, but the metadata remained. Timestamps, file sizes, deletion dates, all pointing to a cover-up. Another parent approached me at school pickup. Their child had changed in Steve's pool house during team practices. They wanted to know more, but were terrified of getting involved. They had their own reputation to protect, their own kid's future to consider. They promised to think about it, but never contacted me again. Fear won over justice. The college application deadline passed while I juggled evidence gathering and damage control. My dream school's portal closed at midnight. My application incomplete. Steve's signature requirement on my recommendation had created an impossible barrier. Years of academic work crumbled because one man controlled a crucial piece of paper. My college fund dwindled with each therapy session and legal consultation. The lawyer explained how defamation cases worked, how Steve's documented evidence created a strong defense. Every meeting cost money we didn't have. Mom's face grew more pinched with each bill. The financial pressure added another layer to our family's crisis. At Claire's favorite restaurant, I confronted Steve during Maya's birthday dinner. The owner had to intervene, his face flushed with embarrassment. He banned both our families permanently, erasing another piece of Claire's memory from our lives. Maya watched from inside, her birthday ruined, her expression a mixture of fury and grief. My tutoring clients started canceling. Their parents had heard about my instability, my obsession with a grieving widower. One by one, my income sources disappeared. Meanwhile, Steve's new girlfriend Margaret picked up those same clients, recommended by concerned parents who trusted Steve's judgment. My financial independence evaporated along with my reputation. Studying in my car became routine. Steve hosted gatherings at their house, Maya's laughter drifting through windows while I hunched over textbooks in the driver's seat. The physical proximity to my former life felt like torture. Every lit window, every burst of conversation reminded me of what I'd lost. Dad's patience finally snapped during another family argument. He told me Mom had made her choices, but my vendetta helped no one. His words carried a weight of exhaustion and defeat. He wanted peace, even if it meant accepting injustice. The divide in our family widened with each passing day. My investigation created unexpected casualties. Maya's favorite teacher faced disciplinary review for not reporting concerns about the pool house. She'd noticed things but hadn't acted on vague suspicions. Now her career hung in the balance. Her daughter, a sophomore, confronted me in tears. Her mom might lose her job because of my crusade. The teacher's husband filed for separation, unable to handle the stress of the scandal. Their family imploded while Steve remained untouched. Watching innocent people suffer because of my pursuit of justice felt like swallowing glass. But stopping meant letting Steve win, letting him continue his manipulations unchecked. During a family therapy session, Mom's therapist posed a devastating question. What if I was misinterpreting everything? What if grief and trauma had colored my perceptions? The doubt she planted took root. I found myself second-guessing memories, wondering if my mind had twisted innocent situations into something sinister. My credibility took another hit when I admitted to entering Steve's yard the previous year. I'd retrieved Maya's diary she'd left behind, climbing their fence after dark. What seemed like a harmless favor between friends became evidence of a pattern of boundary violations. Every past action was recontextualized as obsession. The breakthrough came from Mom's hidden files. She'd been documenting things longer than anyone knew. Camera equipment receipts dated months before the affair scandal broke. Photos of pool house modifications taken from the street. She'd been building a case while pretending everything was normal. Her evidence predated my involvement, proving this wasn't just teenage delusion. Steve's lawyer filed an accelerated motion while we scrambled for legal representation. The legal aid waitlist stretched for months. Claire's journal hidden in that old treehouse makes me wonder how long Maya knew something was wrong with her dad but couldn't face it. We faced a well-funded opponent with only determination and boxes of evidence. The system favored those who could afford to navigate it. Justice seemed less about truth and more about resources. Steve's motive emerged through old text messages Mom had saved. He believed he deserved her after years of being a better husband than dad. His entitlement mixed with genuine grief over losing both Claire and Mom created a toxic cocktail. He saw himself as the victim, denied what he felt was rightfully his. Breaking my promise to Maya became necessary when establishing timelines required revealing Claire's depression. Medical records showed treatment gaps coinciding with pool house incidents. Claire's mental health struggles provided context for her growing suspicions. I betrayed Maya's trust to build a stronger case, hating myself for the necessity. I learned Steve's manipulation tactics by studying his patterns. Evidence timing mattered more than evidence itself. He released information strategically, controlling narratives through careful orchestration. My earnestness died as I adopted his methods. Fighting him required becoming more like him. Befriending Steve's nephew at the gaming store felt slimy but necessary. The kid talked freely about his uncle's habits, his weekend routines, his new security systems. Every casual conversation provided intelligence. I justified the deception as serving a greater good while recognizing how far I'd fallen. Proving one of Steve's lies brought no satisfaction. He'd claimed to be at a specific location, but traffic cameras showed otherwise. The small victory felt hollow when I watched him sob at Claire's headstone later that day. We both brought white roses, standing on opposite sides of her grave, united in grief if nothing else. Steve's defamation suit claimed I'd manufactured evidence. The legal filing painted me as a disturbed teenager targeting a grieving family. His lawyer documented every interaction, every post, every attempt to reveal the truth. The case built steadily while we struggled to respond. Everything hinged on Mom's willingness to share her evidence file. My past kindness haunted me when Steve's mother reminded me how sweet I'd been. I'd brought her cookies during Claire's illness, visited when she was lonely. Now she used those memories to guilt me, wondering what had happened to that caring child. Her tears seemed genuine even as she defended her son. The school divided along predictable lines. Teachers who relied on athletic department funding supported Steve. Those who believed victims sided quietly with me. The PE department froze me out while the art teachers offered subtle support. Education became another battlefield with carefully chosen alliances. A detective friend of Mom's explained the harsh reality. Voyeurism cases needed patterns of behavior, not single incidents. One camera, even in a changing area, might not meet criminal thresholds. The legal system protected privacy only when violations crossed specific lines. Justice and law were different things entirely. Mom called in an old favor from a car accident years ago. Her detective friend couldn't investigate officially, but provided guidance on evidence preservation. She explained chain of custody, documentation requirements, admissibility standards. The favor squared their debt, she said, but her advice proved invaluable. The revelation about Mom's discovery timeline changed everything. She'd found the cameras a month before the affair scandal broke. Instead of running, she'd stayed to document everything. Her bravery in gathering evidence while living in fear reframed the entire narrative. She'd risked everything to build an ironclad case. Mom's hidden file contained photographs with timestamps proving when cameras were installed. She'd taken pictures from various angles, documenting changes to the pool house over time. Her evidence showed premeditation, planning, pattern. She'd been 3 steps ahead while everyone thought she was falling apart. Understanding Mom's choices meant accepting she'd walked into danger knowingly. She'd maintained a relationship with Steve to gather evidence, knowing what he was capable of. Every friendly interaction had been calculated. Every smile had hidden fear and determination. She'd played a longer game than anyone realized. I committed to completing what Mom had started. Public shame meant nothing compared to stopping Steve. My reputation was already destroyed, my future already compromised. But Mom's evidence combined with my documentation could build something undeniable. We'd finish this together. Steve's deposition revealed crucial lies. He claimed cameras were purchased for security after break-ins, but receipts showed purchases predating any reported incidents. His timeline didn't match reality. I presented the receipt evidence to his lawyer calmly, showing no satisfaction as Steve realized his mistake. Other families began quietly coming forward. They'd noticed things but stayed silent out of fear or uncertainty. Steve's pool maintenance gave him access to dozens of homes. The scope of potential violations expanded with each conversation. Parents who'd dismissed concerns now questioned past incidents. The police finally opened a formal investigation based on multiple complaints. The tide was turning, but slowly. Steve maintained his innocence while evidence mounted. The community watched nervously as their trusted neighbor faced scrutiny. Some doubled down on support while others distanced themselves. Everything built toward the school board meeting about pool house safety policies. The entire community would gather to address concerns. Families would literally choose sides of the auditorium. The public forum would force hidden truths into the open. Steve's carefully maintained image would face its greatest test. As that meeting approached, I held Mom's evidence file, knowing it contained enough to change everything. Steve's hands shook whenever he saw me now. We both understood the endgame was near. The question wasn't whether truth would emerge, but what it would cost everyone involved. The war that began with a video posted at 11 p.m. was reaching its climax. Mom revealed she discovered the cameras a month before the affair scandal broke. She'd been documenting everything while pretending to be oblivious. Her hidden file contained photographs with timestamps showing when cameras were installed. She'd taken pictures from various angles, documenting changes to the pool house over time. The evidence showed premeditation and planning. She'd been building a case while everyone thought she was falling apart. The realization hit me hard. Mom had walked into danger knowingly, maintaining a relationship with Steve to gather evidence. Every friendly interaction had been calculated. Every smile had hidden fear and determination. She'd played a longer game than anyone realized, risking everything to build an ironclad case. I committed to completing what Mom had started. My reputation was already destroyed, my future already compromised. But Mom's evidence combined with my documentation could build something undeniable. We'd finish this together, no matter the cost. Steve's deposition revealed crucial lies. He claimed cameras were purchased for security after break-ins, but receipts showed purchases predating any reported incidents. His timeline didn't match reality. I presented the receipt evidence to his lawyer calmly, showing no satisfaction as Steve realized his mistake. His face went pale as he understood the trap he'd walked into. Other families began quietly coming forward. They'd noticed things but stayed silent out of fear or uncertainty. Steve's pool maintenance gave him access to dozens of homes. The scope of potential violations expanded with each conversation. Parents who'd dismissed concerns now questioned past incidents, wondering what they'd missed. The police finally opened a formal investigation based on multiple complaints. The tide was turning slowly. Steve maintained his innocence while evidence mounted. The community watched nervously as their trusted neighbor faced scrutiny. Some doubled down on support while others distanced themselves, choosing sides in an invisible war. The school board meeting about pool house safety policies drew the entire community. Families literally chose sides of the auditorium, creating a visible divide. The tension was palpable as people filed in, whispering and glancing between Steve's supporters and those who'd begun to question. I sat with Mom, our evidence folder heavy in my lap. Steve compulsively checked exits while my hands shook holding the evidence. We made eye contact across the room, both understanding this was the moment everything would change. His usual confident demeanor had cracked, replaced by nervous energy that made him fidget constantly. The detective assigned to the case presented technical analysis of camera equipment and recording capabilities. The presentation was clinical, factual, devastating. She explained how the equipment equipment worked, what it could capture, how long recordings were stored. Parents shifted uncomfortably as they realized the implications for their own children. Steve's brother stood up during the public comment period. His voice cracked as he admitted he'd told Steve those cameras were creepy, but Steve insisted they were for insurance purposes. The admission broke family ranks, creating a ripple of shock through Steve's supporters. His own brother's doubt carried weight that my accusations never could. The judge overseeing the investigation ordered examination of all properties Steve maintained. The scope expanded beyond just Maya's pool house. Every family whose pool he serviced would need to be notified, their properties checked. The magnitude of the situation finally began to sink in for the community. A tech expert provided preliminary authentication of recordings to investigators. The technical evidence was irrefutable. Date stamps, file formats, metadata all pointed to systematic recording over months. Steve's claims of recent installation for security purposes crumbled under forensic analysis. The evidence revealed a pattern of voyeurism, but also Steve's delusion that he was protecting pool users. He documented what he called safety concerns, creating elaborate justifications for his surveillance. His twisted logic became clear through his own meticulous records. He genuinely believed he was helping, monitoring for inappropriate behavior while committing it himself. Steve's breakdown at the meeting was complete. He stood up, shouting that everyone used that pool house for changing, demanding to know why he was the only one being punished. His mask finally slipped completely, revealing the entitled rage beneath his grieving widower persona. Security had to escort him out as he continued ranting about unfairness. The investigators asked me to provide a victim impact statement. I sat in the small office, choosing my words carefully. I explained the destruction of friendships, the family trauma, the community division. But I also requested mental health evaluation for Steve, recognizing that Claire would have wanted him helped rather than just punished. Maya chose to live with her aunt while Steve faced charges. The decision tore her apart, but she couldn't stay in that house knowing what had happened there. I saw her packing boxes one afternoon, her movements mechanical and distant. We didn't speak, but she nodded when she saw me, a small acknowledgement of shared pain. The community divided between those who claimed they'd always suspected something and those who'd enabled Steve's behavior through willful blindness. The finger-pointing and blame-shifting revealed ugly truths about how predators operate in plain sight, protected by social standing and community trust. Returning to school brought mixed reactions. Some people supported me, others still viewed me as the teenager who destroyed a grieving family. But unexpected support came from church youth group members who believed in redemption and truth. They didn't shun me like others had, instead offering quiet acceptance that meant more than grand gestures. My acceptance letter from my safety school arrived during this chaos. It wasn't my dream school, but it was a fresh start. The scholarship was smaller, the program less prestigious, but it was mine. Steve couldn't touch it, couldn't influence it, couldn't take it away. Restraining orders were filed to protect both families during the legal process. The formalization of our separation felt both liberating and sad. Years of friendship reduced to legal documents and required distances. Maya entered therapy to process everything, beginning her own journey toward healing. The investigation continued with careful documentation and proper procedures. This wasn't a dramatic takedown, but a slow, methodical process. Evidence was cataloged, statements recorded, patterns established. Justice moved at bureaucratic pace, frustrating but thorough. Mom's role in gathering evidence became public during the investigation. Her calculated bravery earned both admiration and criticism. Some called her heroic for risking herself to gather proof. Others questioned why she didn't report immediately. The complexity of her choices defied simple judgment. Steve's assets were frozen pending investigation outcomes. The memorial fund for Maya's college was transferred to a neutral trustee. Financial justice moved alongside criminal proceedings, ensuring Steve couldn't use money as another weapon. Maya would get her college fund, free from her father's control. Local pool maintenance companies implemented new policies about changing areas and security. The ripple effects of our case spread through the industry. Background checks became standard. Privacy protocols were strengthened. Change happened quietly, but significantly. My therapy sessions shifted from mandated grief counseling to genuine processing of trauma. The therapist who'd once doubted me now helped me work through the complex emotions of being right, but at such cost. Vindication didn't erase the pain of lost friendships and community standing. Dad struggled with his own guilt about not seeing the signs sooner. He threw himself into supporting Mom and me, trying to make up for his earlier dismissal. Family dinners became regular again, filled with careful conversation and gradual healing. We were different, but still together. The preliminary hearing established sufficient evidence for formal charges. Steve's lawyer tried various defenses, but the technical evidence was overwhelming. The legal process would take months, maybe years, but it had begun. The system was working, slowly but properly. Some families discovered concerning footage and chose to handle it privately. Not everyone wanted public involvement, preferring quiet settlements and personal closure. The investigation respected these choices while building its larger case. Justice took many forms. Margaret disappeared from Steve's life as quickly as she'd entered it. His manipulated girlfriend couldn't maintain the facade once evidence emerged. She left town quietly, another casualty of Steve's deceptions. Even those who'd supported him began to distance themselves. My scholarship applications for the next year required explaining the gap in my activities. I wrote honestly about community conflict and personal growth. Some schools would reject me for the controversy, others might admire the courage. Either way, I owned my story. The pool house was demolished by court order. I watched from the street as excavators reduced it to rubble. Maya stood at her bedroom window, and for a moment, we were united in witnessing the physical destruction of what had destroyed our friendship. The space would become a garden, Claire's sister later told me. Local news covered the story briefly, focusing on safety improvements rather than salacious details. We weren't famous, weren't viral, weren't inspiring legislation. We were just a community grappling with betrayal and working toward healing. The scale remained human, personal, real. Steve's monitoring included ankle bracelet tracking and mandatory therapy. He lived with his brother now, his life circumscribed by legal requirements. Justice didn't look like movies portrayed it. It looked like daily check-ins and restricted movement and slow accountability. 6 months later, at another school board meeting about privacy protections, I testified about recognizing predatory behavior in trusted community members. My voice was steady as I explained how predators use community standing as shields, how they manipulate trust and exploit access. Maya sat in the audience, not exactly supporting me, but no longer actively opposing me. She nodded once during my testimony, a small gesture that felt like progress. Steve awaited trial with monitoring, the legal process grinding forward. Justice progressed slowly but surely. I changed through this experience, harder in some ways but also clearer about truth's importance. Mom's evidence proved crucial to building the case. Her courage in gathering proof while living in fear had made everything possible. The story that began with a video posted at 11 p.m. had reached its conclusion, not with dramatic revelations or sudden vindication, but with slow, steady progress toward justice. Our community was forever changed, some friendships irreparably broken, but truth had finally emerged. I focused on college preparations and helping prevent future victims, knowing that healing would take years but had finally begun.
Like and subscribe for more Broken Stories content. I do not sleep.